Hi, my name is Chris, aka The Philosopher's Games, or TPhGames as my little games channel here is called, and in a few hours Elden Ring Nightreign comes out. Disclaimer, I did not play any network test or had early access to the game, so I'm also just waiting for it to release and finally test it like everybody else. And I decided to make this little fun video here, which please don't take it too serious, though I know Fromsoft from all the years of playing Souls games, so it's almost like a little bingo. So what could go wrong on release and during the time after it? And then maybe after some time we revisit this list in another video and see what has become true and what not. Will be quite interesting. If you have also some ideas for the list, feel free to post them in the comments. Let us start with the first few points, which I can summarize with connection issues on launch. This is not unusual for big releases, so I have the login queue simulator on launch as point 1, matchmaking issues, friends can't connect to lobby, etc., random disconnects during the match and connection issues, and no way to reconnect during a match if you get kicked out mid-match. And beyond this, everything that is kind of related. Is, I guess, not too big of a guess because that's kind of the nature. At release, everybody wants to get on the server at the same time. This overloads the servers and then nothing works anymore. We have seen this with bigger releases, and Fromsoft is clearly not a company that is extremely good with multiplayer and known for their perfectly smooth launches and releases, so I would not be surprised if there are quite a few issues. Actually, I would be surprised if this would be an absolutely smooth launch. These connection issues will also be solved relatively quickly, maybe after a day or two, and then everything might work. My next prediction has to do with the fact that Elden Ring Nightreign is based on the original Elden Ring, which came out with a ton of area transition stutters. Even in the DLC, we still had some transition stutters. Just think of the Relana fight, for example. Sometimes you had in this boss arena some weird stutters. At some point, with further patches, I think it got better for some people at least, but it took Fromsoft a long time to address this. So I think area transition stutters will be back on the menu, boys. The next point is PC related, and that is the version I will play. In this context also there will be no crossplay. We already knew about this, which is very unfortunate. Elden Ring was so successful and sold like 16 million copies, and they kind of get stingy here and don't let everybody play together. That's very unfortunate in my opinion, and definitely something to criticize. However, I also predict that there will be no DLSS and FSR features in the game. That is, that you render it at a lower resolution, and then with DLSS, with some smart deep learning stuff, it get upscaled to a higher resolution. This way you get a better frame rate, more stable and better performance, but lose a bit of image quality. That is used everywhere, and I don't think that will be available at launch, and maybe never. Only for Elden Ring there was like a mod adding this to the game. It was never implemented even for the base game Elden Ring, which is very unfortunate, and I don't know why they don't implement it. Also, due to Nightreign being a multiplayer game, you have to use the anti-cheat, so you can't use mods when you play online. I hope there will be an offline mode, but who knows. Little spoiler from the future, no DLSS and FSR and XeSS is confirmed. My next prediction is a very cheap one. Camera is still terrible. Well, I think we can all agree that this is most likely the case. I would hope so much that they improve the camera further, and they already did, to be honest. Like, if you compare the camera from Elden Ring to the camera of Dark Souls 1 and 2 and so on, you definitely notice, well, it got definitely better, but it still has issues and can be annoying at times. I would also include the lock-on system to the camera and potential problems. Next one is also pretty easy in my opinion, and I think a few classes and weapons, etc. will be completely OP and broken and unbalanced, and everybody will play them at some point. Like in the base game, Samurai and Vagabond are by far the strongest classes with basically no competition. If you have the choice and you do like, I don't know, a competitive challenge run, be it bingo or kind of a speed run or whatever, you will always see players choose these two classes if they are allowed, for a good reason. There's still some very broken stuff in the game, like Star Fists, like Impaling Thrust and Square Off and so on. These are just absolutely insane weapons and Ashes of War that are just far too strong in comparison to a lot of other stuff. On the other side, you have things like crossbows and bows in Elden Ring, which are complete trash. The next point, which is unfortunately I think already confirmed, is that progression will favor the host of the match. So that means basically you connect to somebody, he's hosting the game, and your progression towards a certain goal won't count in a weird way. And then this will lead to confusion and problems and frustration. Just think of how co-op works in Elden Ring and also in the previous Souls games, and then you can kind of imagine how even Nightreign, which is a co-op focused multiplayer game, will have some issues there, because sometimes Fromsoft is absolutely resistant to learning. There will be some game-breaking glitches and bugs that people will start abusing, especially I guess this might be interesting in the speedrunning community. And just think of Beano boosting in Dark Souls 2, or think of all the weird out-of-bound glitches that were possible in Dark Souls 3 and also in 2 and in 1 I guess as well. Further, in Elden Ring we had the flying torrent glitch, in the DLC we had the sleepwalking glitch. Oh, in Dark Souls 2 we also had the parry walking glitch, which you also allowed you to fly basically. So there are quite a few things that always somehow get into the game and are overlooked in playtesting, and then people start abusing it and then they have to address it pretty fast. Very curious to see what it will be for Nightreign. Oh, there's another fun one from Elden Ring. Remember on release when you would finish Melania phase 1 with like a critical attack with basically this finisher, this visceral attack, and then she would die immediately in the second phase? Man, that was fun. Well, there's another funny one with Horalu. At the end of phase 1, if you kill him and he does this ground explosion, but it doesn't explode in time before the cutscene, you get hit in phase 2 after the cutscene. Oh, they never fixed that one, it's still in the game and also works on some other bosses like Maliketh or Fire Giant. Well, what can I say? Classic Fromsoft. In this context, I could also imagine that there will be some stuff that should have worked day 1 and will be patched later. We already know that having 2 player lobbies will also be patched in later, so there's already that, but I'm curious what other features might be missing and will have to come to this multiplayer experience later, because Fromsoft, like I said, sometimes they are just learn resistant. And of course it will take Fromsoft ages to patch anything. Just think of the area transition status. It took like, I don't know, a year or something till they even addressed that one. That was very interesting to see. The next point is 70% of people will play as Executor. I think we can all agree he has a katana, he has the Sekiro parrying, deflecting style. People love that, and that's why most people will play him. The next point is some weird interactions from the base game are still present in Nightreign. Since they basically use Elden Ring as a foundation and modify it, I can imagine that some of the stuff will be just carried over, and sometimes you could say they should maybe fix this or change this interaction because it's very counterintuitive. We will see what it will be. I will definitely look out for stuff like this, and it would not be surprising, to be honest. I guess also not that big of a deal, but it's always interesting to see. The next point is that some newly added mechanic will feel very clunky. I think that's actually somewhat unusual for Fromsoft, though there's always a little clunky element. Think of the classic jump in Dark Souls 1, which you needed here and there to get certain items. And even the jumping in Elden Ring is okay, but always felt a little bit clunky. On the other side, jumping with a horse feels pretty good, while turning on the spot with a horse can feel a bit clunky, same with the horse combat. So there's always some element where Fromsoft kind of fails a little bit. I'm curious to see what it is in Nightreign. I heard that the vaulting feels a bit clunky, but we will see when the game is out. My next point is, after a time, people will play the game very differently from its original design intention, in some ways at least. And this maybe is more towards the more hardcore player crowd, if that makes sense. Just think of stuff like Bingo, which got massively popular in the Twitch bubble, and also other modes that people play, some sequence breaks that became pretty standard, like the stake skip to Redan and so on. So a lot of interesting interactions that people find and how to circumvent certain things and start playing it in a different way. Modding is also a big part. Also think of something like the seamless co-op mod, how this changed the game for a lot of people and how popular that got. Then my last point is Fromsoft will not explain all new mechanics well enough, and this will lead to frustration and confusion. In the past, Fromsoft explained nothing. If you think of Demon's Souls or Dark Souls 1, there were very few explanations and you really had to kind of find things out, look and discuss stuff online and think, okay, what could this mean? How could this mechanic work? That's kind of classic Fromsoft, but I think when they reached Dark Souls 3 and then Sekiro, I think they started explaining more. Like in the tutorial of Sekiro, in that part, the game pauses basically and explains you what to do with a big text hint. Same in Elden Ring, interestingly. And in this regard, I could imagine that also Nightreign will follow this recent Fromsoft trend, but sometimes they leave out some crucial information that people need to know about and don't explain them. And for maybe the Fromsoft people developing this, they are completely obvious, but for a new player, it can be then very confusing and frustrating. I heard there is some confusion about how these remembrance quests work and when you progress them where and when does the progress count and when not. So I imagine some problems there as well. And this brings us to the end of the video. Of course, I focus here on the negative things. It's just what is the classic Fromsoft experience? What problems and issues always come up? And will Fromsoft learn out of their mistakes of the past in some way at some point? Who knows? Maybe Elden Ring Nightreign is the time where things change. It would be great if some of these issues would not be present at launch of Elden Ring Nightreign. But I also know Fromsoft quite well. And don't get me wrong, there are also a lot of positive things. We focused here on the negatives, but the soundtrack will be awesome. The animation quality will be awesome. There will be epic and fun boss fights. There will be cool and fun weapons to play. And I also like the idea of a roguelite co-op Elden Ring spin-off that you can play with your friends. That's a pretty cool idea in of itself. We will see how well it works and how well they might be able to update the game and add more content to it, because multiplayer games that focus on that and that only have to kind of also give more and more content to the players, else it dies out pretty fast and gets boring at some point. And of course, I still love Elden Ring. I still play it to this day. I have literally thousands of hours in this game, so it's not like I don't like it. But if you play it a lot, you also see some of the issues, and sometimes you hope, can Fromsoft maybe overcome those? That would be awesome in some ways. Some issues are actually fun to have in the game, to be honest. But sometimes you also wish that they improve in some aspects. But yeah, again, thank you people for watching. If you liked this video, feel free to let me know in the comments, press the like button, maybe subscribe, would be much appreciated. And I will update you on my impressions of the game pretty soon after I spend some time with it and actually able to play. #login queue simulator, and we will see how well that will work on launch in a few hours. Also sorry for the lazy editing here, because I had very little time to make this video. It was a very spontaneous idea, and I hope it's still interesting to you. Huge shout outs and thank you to all my supporters on all the different platforms. Much appreciated, and see you people next time. Goodbye.